We have the Genesis ban list, points list, clan list, man list. And as expected, they did indeed give us a blog post explanation rundown, definitions, etc., of the October 27 first ever real Genesis point list, clan list, ban list. We're here live with the Genesis ban list Farfa to Open number 2. We've got over 150 players live right now on Twitch. We are going to be testing it out to see what it ends up being. Now, someone mentioned a very good point on, would you believe it, twitter.com of all places, but someone did mention, like, everyone seems to have a different idea of what Genesis should be. And I think that's kind of like maybe a big thing that I hope they probably try and sit down and properly, like, you know, explain at some point, because I think there's a misconception among the player base of what the purpose of a Genesis format is. Basically, a lot of people interpret Genesis to basically just be TCG, but diet TCG. And a lot of people are okay with that. A lot of other people want Genesis to be, like, very unique, very different to the TCG, almost different in playstyles, no turn zero gameplay, no unbreakable boards, which you could argue there's a Venn diagram crossing between both of these definitions, but it's just like this strange position for Genesis where it is kind of like it feels very community driven in a lot of ways, but a lot of people don't really agree on what the point is supposed to be. I mean, you can just see right now, literally someone here is saying turn zeros are good, right? Like, you're going to have someone immediately after that, and they're going to very much disagree with you that turn zero gameplay is good in Genesis, all right? A lot people will very much tell you that is a terrible thing for Genesis format. Other people will tell you it's actually good. So, anyway, let's get into the pointless definitions of what Genesis, what the clan list was trying to do here. Maybe we'll extrapolate some of that information. With this month's points update, what were you expecting? If you haven't seen it yet, you can find the change here. There's been a lot of chatter about the update. Want to take some time to answer some of the more common questions about the changes and how the numbers got to where they are. Let's begin. Why didn't Radiant, Typhoon, Vision get any points while Impulse did? It's a matter of what people were playing and not playing in the deck lists we have access to. In the data we have, Impulse is all over the place, but Vision is almost exclusively used by Radiant Typhoon, which is its home. The fact that this question is coming up at all means there must be a lot of Genesis play going on that we aren't seeing, which is good. YouTube.com/FarfaBilly. Just watch the YouTube channel, okay? We got over 100 players today. The more people are playing, the better. But if you want your gameplay to affect the overall format, we need to see those deck lists and tournament results. Hashtag Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis! How did you come up with the 11-11 33-point spread for Vanquish Soul? So those numbers are very specific. I know, like, we all love to rag on a certain content creator and talk about the vibes-based points numbers. But there are very deliberate, specific numbers involved with regards to certain engines and cards. If a card is like 33, because there's a particular threshold they don't want you to go over, right? Very simple example. I was trying to build Sprite the other day in Genesis, and Gigantic is 20. Ronin Toden is, I believe, like 60 or something, but Swaffrog is 33. So a combination of those cards together means that you literally just can't make Toad in Sprite. Sorry, not Gigantic. Did I say Gigantic? I think I meant Totally Awesome. So making Toads with Frogs is not possible in Genesis format because the numbers are very deliberately slightly over the amount for the most consistent way to make that combo. So these numbers are relevant, and in the case of Vanquish Soul, well, they just don't want me to max out on Holy Sue if you want to play Vanquish Soul. The main goals for Vanquish Soul was to reduce Holy Sue's outsized impact on duels, especially turn 1 of duels, and to keep her away from Ash Blossom while making sure that Vanquish Soul decks that look more like the Agov era version stay legal. Yeah, so that's interesting. It seems like they are kind of not actually okay with turn 0 gameplay. The main goals of Vanquish Soul Adjustment were to reduce Holy Sue's outsized impact on duels, especially turn 1. You see that? So, last time I think we were having a discussion about Genesis, we were specifically mentioning, like, do we think turn 0 gameplay, you know, the classic Femina Holy Sue style play on your turn type of Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay that's very common in TCG. Is that something that should be in Genesis? Well, according to this blog, it seems like they actually don't want you to do turn 1 gameplay like this. So at least there's, whether you agree with it or not, is besides the point. At least there's some clarity about it. We wanted running more than one Holy Suit to disrupt the basic foundation of the deck. We wanted running more than one Holy Suit to disrupt the basic foundation of the deck, or at least make players do something strange like go all in on start with lower counts of Raisin, for instance. The set of numbers that both accomplishes this goal and is, we think, the easiest to understand and work with, while deck building is 11-11-33, but remember, nothing's permanent. If you run 3-3-1 of Raisin Jiaolong Su, that's 99 and you get to keep the band together, minus Ash. But you can also skip Holy Su completely and run 3-2-3 for 100 and keep the advantage of having Ash. So you can see, like, there's very deliberate maths here, right? They are specifically adjusting the point values in a way where if you want to play, like, classic Vanquish Soul, quote-unquote, with Ash Blossom, and obviously for those of you who don't play Vanquish Soul, Ash Blossom is a very integral card because, number one, it's a generically good hand trap, but number two, the attribute requirements is very important. Ash Blossom is probably just the best fire reveal you can have in the deck. So it's very specific and deliberate that this goes to 100, right? Raisin Jiaolong Ash for 100 to keep the advantage of having Ash in your deck, while most other decks aren't running it or considering it in their lines. This is akin to what people were playing after Jiaolong's release. Other permutations are also possible, and the Vanquish Soul cards are very powerful and easy to pull out of your decks. We expect Vanquish Soul to still be a strong deck. So basically, the entire adjustment surrounding Vanquish Soul was all centered around Holy Su's control. They designed the points of Vanquish Soul with this list to pretty much be a way for players to choose for themselves, do you want Holy Su in your deck? And how is that going to affect your Raisin Ash ratios? Why didn't 7th Tachyon get any points? The short answer is that it costs a card in hand and an extra deck slot, and it locks you to Xyz. The combination of which made it inconvenient for general use. Being limited to one type of strategy makes it hard to reach the point where it would justify adding points to it, even though it's strong and casts a wide net. For the long answer, let's take a look at the type searchers, whose role 7th Tachyon usurps in the deck that can play it. Rota, Tenki, Fossil Dig, Emergency are all 35s as of the new update. Granite and Banshee are 33, as is Bonfire. Nightmare Apprentice dropped from 40 to 20, and Mining is 0. Why is Mining 0? It's not because Link monsters aren't allowed, it's because it costs you a discard to use. I mean, it'd be weird to say I disagree with the person who is literally designing the format, but I feel like saying that Signet Mining is 0 because it costs a discard, I mean, you can't say that you can't ignore the fact that Signet Mining searches Cyverse monsters, which are useless in this format, right? Like, it is kind of relevant that you can't, like, basically play a Cyverse deck. Nightmare Apprentice costs a discard as well, but was priced at the same rate as the other type search because it's effectively free due to being an illusion monster you get to keep and wall up with, even if something goes wrong. We lowered it more than the other spell. I mean, other than that, the logic still stands. We lowered it other than the spells on this list because we didn't think the prior points properly weighed the fact there was a discard on it in the first place. Tachyon casts a much wider net than Mining, but also costs extra deck space and XC locks to do so. The more apt comparison would be Small World, whose net is even wider than Tachyon. This card costs you a monster from hand, a bridge card still in your deck, a significant amount of brain power, and 0 points. The cost, rage, convenience of Tachyon places it squarely between Mining and Small World, both 0, and so its initial value was 0. As for why it wasn't increased, it's just not being used enough. The XE decks were largely underrepresented, that it's not seeing the widespread use of a Pot of Extrava or even Upstart, which makes sense seeing as it locks you into XEs, and many decks in the format focus on fusions and synchros. So right now, nothing we have shows it's out of line. Just really quickly here, you can see it's, whether you disagree or not, it's a bit odd that they are they're very much kind of like tuning a lot of the numbers based off on card use. Now, while representation and performance and card use is a fairly valid way to point adjust, it can be a little bit dangerous, right? Because just because no one is playing something doesn't always necessitate that it shouldn't be pointed. Or just because something is playing a lot doesn't really necessitate that it needs to have its points increased. I feel like archetypes and engines usually fall into that kind of category. But if we take a look at something maybe like staples, like, you know, if Valor becomes really popular, for example, like, should you increase Valor? Potentially, but also, like, I think it's okay for cards to be good, but also not just keep increasing their points because they get higher and higher, right? Anyway, with the points added to Flying Sea, it's possible that Exceed decks could roar back and dominate the Pittsburgh qualifiers and invitationals and push away decks that can't use 7th Tachyon, but it's difficult to imagine such a drastic shift. That said, this card and Small World are both cards we're keeping an eye on. What did Beelze do to go to 0 to 100? Yo, is this a Stevie reference? The same old FTK trick it's been up to for the last decade, ever since Flare Metal has been released. Basically, you summon both monsters, use an effect to give Beelze to your opponent, then damage them in any way. That sets off an infinite loop of Beelze activating to gain attack and Flare Metal dealing damage as a result, ending the game immediately. Instead, a couple of Synchro Dragons with the same type of burn effect have been released, as well as Mind Castlin, which makes the exchange easier to do. One person brought the Blackwing version of the deck, Assault Dragon, to the qualifiers, and that was enough for it to get kicked out of the party. Why didn't Dimension Shifter's point cost go up? Oh, baby! Here it comes. It's barely getting played, it's just that simple. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier. Usage doesn't really necessitate a perfect way to analyze cards and point them, right? Even if this is true, which I don't really know how true this is. I feel like any deck that can play Shifter probably is just playing Shifter. So, you know, they're obviously not going to look at any community tournaments. They're only going to look at their personal events, like official Konami endorsed ones. But this is a perfect example of why adjusting based off of play rate is not good. Just because a card has a low play rate doesn't necessarily mean it should be kept at a low point cost, right? I mean, geez, like, Beelze is a great example, right? Like, they basically emergency banned Beelze because of, like, one guy at a qualifier, right? They, like, buffed, or rather, they nerfed last turn or something because literally just, like, Stevie, you know? Like, they're getting one guide, right? Is that worth hitting a deck? I mean, yes, but not for those reasons, right? It's an FTK. Right? It's a stupid card. It's like, it shouldn't, like, even if one person out of 1,000 plays it, it's still dumb, right? You should get rid of it. So it's the same case with Dimension Shifter, in my opinion. It doesn't matter if it isn't seeing play. You should still make Shifter expensive as hell. We know there's a lot of chatter about it, but it's just not showing up in many deck lists so far. The general rule is that cards played a lot go up, cards not played a lot don't. Even Exo decks are cutting it, and you'd think that would be the one place you always see it. Is that true? Aren't Exo Sisters cutting Shifter because the points are, like, too difficult now? Because Shifter, because Exo got pointed, like, with this list now. They're citing it, if anything. I feel like you would absolutely cite it, right? Why didn't Dimension... Oh, sorry, just read that. Yep. Okay, alright. What in the world happened to the Branded Extra deck? Yeah, what did they do to Branded, dude? The follow-on, the Virtuous, was going to become the best in-slot generic quick play removal spell if we didn't cost both it and the extra monsters that get you another copy of it or another card in general. The numbers probably look intimidating for all you Branded fans out there, but we've made sure that Branded-based strategies are still viable even if they don't look like the Branded decks you're familiar with. We're already seeing strategy guides being posted for the new points cost on how to make the deck still work, and as always, we keep a close eye on this. Well, I mean, I'm not a Branded player, nor an expert. No idea how you would even begin to play Branded with some of those hits. But the problem is, like, if you're trying to hit this one spell, the follow-on and the Virtuous, you have to hit, like, 3 cards alongside it, right? That's the problem with generic cards like this, without restrictions and, you know, who, like, generically send from the extra or the main deck. They're always going to be problematic in a soup of multiple cards around it. So you either just hit the problem in of itself, or you hit every other card. I mean, it's the Halka Fibrax paradox, right? Remember when Halka Fibrax was around? It's like, what, Konami, why don't you just ban Halka Fibrax? It's like, no. Alright. You know what? I'm gonna play the clip just because it's been a while, and it's iconic.
What are you... Alright, I figured out how to fix the game. First, we ban all the tuna monsters.
See? Like, how do we fix the Fallen and the Virtuous? Well, we'll just ban all the fusion monsters. Like, that's what they did, right? That's just what they're doing. They're just banning all the fusions. Okay. Are you hiding in my walls? No, that's weird. Happy Halloween. And that's all the time we have. YCS Pittsburgh coming up soon, and we hope to see you there. Now, obviously, big W on communication. I would much rather disagree than be left in the dark to just assume and imagine situations and things. So this is very good. This is very specific and deliberate and well-intentioned, and it's very well elucidating the goal of this list. And it also drops a couple of tidbits here and there about the Genesis format as a general concept, with some of the discussion points around things like mining and around some of the number and point costs with regards to like Holy Sue. So it gives a great larger scope analysis of Genesis as a whole, rather than just like the the individual card choices themselves. So it's cool to see. Now, there were definitely a couple of other things here that I felt I've seen a lot of people question, and they just didn't really talk about it. For me, one of the big questions I would like answered is why they felt Droll and Lockbird should stay at that number, and Nibiru getting buffed as well. Now, there's a couple of things here. I mean, there's a whole bunch of hand traps they could have talked about, like all together. Nibiru, Ghost Mortar, Ogre, all of those they could have discussed those a little bit. I mean, I think like TLDR, they would probably just say something akin to what they already did, which is, you know, play rate. I don't know how popular Nibiru has been, but dropping the cost from 30 to 15 for a playset is a pretty significant buff. But at the same time, this kind of goes back to the whole concept of what is the purpose of Genesis? Why does Genesis exist, and what do people want from Genesis? Is it a format that should even necessitate Nibiru? Right? That's an important thing. If it's a format that necessitates Nibiru, then I feel like you're slightly kind of teetering on the brink of potentially just having TCG Lite. In a world where people want a low-power format, simpler gameplay, you probably don't want Nibiru to even have to be in the game in the first place. So it's kind of weird because it's like, the purpose of Nibiru is to stop crazy N boards. I've always suggested that the best thing to do is reduce the power of N boards, rather than, what's the word, create band-aid fixes that stop the N boards. You see what I'm saying? Good example is like the 2019 Megatons that Nibiru came in. It's like, why did they make those cards? Dark Ruler, Shifter, Nibiru. What are those cards for? It's the arms race to dealing with the N boards of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? The N boards, the combos have to get stronger to play through and beat these cards, but then they print these cards like Nibiru, Dark Ruler, Shifter to beat those N boards. So this has to get more powerful in order to beat this. But in order to beat this, then they have to make cards that beat this. Then those cards get too powerful, so these cards need to be designed to beat this. And then boom, 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 you just have power creep ad infinitum. So at some point, you have to take a step back and be like, okay, well, maybe we need to address this at the root cause. So that's kind of like my whole interpretation of Nibiru. And it seems like they've just gone ahead and made it cheaper because they just want you to stop the N boards more consistently rather than hitting the N board pieces. Anyway, that's the Genesis points cost discussion. See you guys in the next one. And we're going to go and head back live to the tournament. By the time you see this video, I guess it'll be, I guess you'll have the tournament tomorrow on my main channel. Bye-bye.